Good day everybody, it's Piet Sarfontein here and thank you for joining me in today's webinar. Before we're going to start this webinar, I need to bring the UnumFX presentation disclaimer under your attention. In short, you can't regard this webinar as any trading or investment advice and it's only for educational purposes. So in this specific webinar, we're going to look at what is the Fibonacci numbers, how the golden ratio manifests in nature, going to look at the golden ratio and how the golden ratio and Fibonacci numbers are working together, Fibonacci numbers conclusion, Fibonacci trading, how to correctly draw Fibonacci retracements, and then lastly we're going to look at Fibonacci projections. So what is Fibonacci numbers? So Fibonacci numbers are a sequence of integers. Typically, we will start at 0, 1 and continue to 2, 3, 5, 8, 13 and 21. Each new number being the sum of the previous two. So to give you a classical example, 0 plus 1 equals 1, 1 plus 1 equals 2, 1 plus 2 equals 3, 2 plus 3 equals 5. So you can see the Fibonacci numbers coming through 1, 2, 3 and 5. So the Fibonacci numbers are often presented in conjunction with the golden ratio. So what's the golden ratio? Let's first look at how the golden ratio manifests in nature. So the first image is that of a spider web. And then typically, if you're going to look at the snail, and specifically the shell of the snail, you can also see these call it ratio numbers coming out. So let me give some clarity. So the golden ratio, the universe may be a chaotic and unpredictable, but it's also a highly organized physical realm bound by the laws of mathematics. I know it's a mouthful, but bear with me for a moment. One of the most fundamental and strikingly beautiful ways these laws manifest is through the golden ratio. Now, let's look at the golden ratio and Fibonacci numbers. Can you see the Fibonacci numbers coming out in the image that I've presented? Typically 2, 3, 5, 8 and so forth. Now, each number after 8 is 1.618 times the previous number and 0.618 times the next number. So if you're going to look at 21 divided by 13, you're going to get 1.618. If you're going to multiply 13 by 0.618, you're going to get 8. So it's these, let's call it golden numbers that's standing out. So Fibonacci numbers conclusion. So everywhere you will see these patterns in nature pointing to the fact that all aspects are in some way connected. Even the financial markets, and more specifically the forex market. Now let's look at Fibonacci trading. The key Fibonacci retracement levels to keep an eye are typically 23.6, 38.2, 50%, 61.8 and typically what we've highlighted, and 76.4. The levels that seems to hold the most weight are 38.2, 50% and 61.8% levels. Remember that most forex traders view the Fibonacci retracement levels as potential support and resistance areas. So Fibonacci levels can be used for evaluating retracements or bounce areas. You can see when I'm going to finish off this presentation what I typically will refer to. Now, how to correctly draw Fibonacci retracements. This is typically a daily chart of the euro dollar, and you draw a typical, let's call it Fibonacci retracement from a high to a low. Now, if you're going to fill it in with what I've used as a Fibonacci retracement level, you can see now the Fibonacci levels that's standing out. Starting with the peak at 1.0991 and to the low of 1.855. So where do you draw it from? But as I've mentioned, you draw typically from a high to a low or from a low to a high. But now, say for instance, I'm going to decide to use that specific peak and trough. Now it becomes very, very, very subjective. So what I'm emphasizing here is that between different traders, you will see most likely different Fibonacci levels. But I've got the solution to that. I will keep my look back period the same. So you'll ask me, how do I do this? So let me quickly explain. If I am calculating my Fibonacci levels, and this is typically for the euro dollar, I will set my last date. In this example, it was on the 15th of April, and my look back period, typically more or less 10 days, will be the 1st of April. So now I'm calculating where's my peak, the highest price, and where's my trough, the lowest price. So typically my peak was on the 31st of March, and my trough was on the 6th of April. Now if I'm going to fill you in here, you can see now with this insert, this is where I've started drawing my Fibonacci levels. The insert on the left, you will see the euro dollar that's starting with resistance at 1.1043 to a support of 1.0767. That's been presented on the chart on the right. Now, interesting enough, you can see my resistance as I've highlighted, 1.1043, and also my support sitting at 1.0767. And then also my in-between levels, that's the retracement levels, typically what I've mentioned, 23.6, 38.2, 50%, and 61.8%. You can see how these levels are unfolded or calculated. Now most likely you will receive this UnumFX technical trade levels each and every morning. So now I've highlighted how I'm calculating this, let's call it peak and trough, and therefore the resistance and support levels. But now I am keeping my look back period exactly the same for all my Forex pairs. So there's no subjectivity I'm bringing in. It's a hard and cold fact. I'm using a look back period of 10 days. Let's quickly look at Fibonacci projections. So when the price action moves beyond these peaks and troughs, so typically what I've highlighted as the support and resistance levels. So yet again, I've presented this image before. You can see now my resistance sitting at 1.1043 and my support at 1.0767. So what's happening if the price action move beyond these levels? So typically you're getting these projections to the downside and projections to the upside. So let's typically look at the projections to the upside. So typically what's going to happen if my price action is going to move above 1.1043. And yet again, I'm just filling in the, let's call it period that I'm looking, or the price movement. And typically you're going to see my first projection, my plus P1, is sitting at 1.1108. And that's typically my projection of 23.6% moving forward. Just in summary, some closing thoughts. So Fibonacci numbers are found everywhere in nature, and many traders believe that they are relevant when charting financial markets and specifically Forex. However, as with all technical indicators, the relationship between price action, chart patterns, and indicators isn't based on any scientific principle or physical law. I'm always referring to the fact that trading is not an exact science. Now, even if Fibonacci retracement levels don't necessarily correlate with anything tangible, they may work as a tool to try and predict areas of interest. Now I'm saying please believe it or not. So this is yet again back to my euro dollar chart, daily chart, and I've constructed my levels from a high of 1.0991 to a low of 1.0855. Now, interesting enough, the price action corrected or retraced close to the 61.8 retracement level, or in fact 1.0939. But remember now, this was from a significant peak to a significant low. Now let me fill in with the euro dollar, and I've highlighted how I'm calculating this, but just to put everybody on the same page. So it's more or less that price action. Interesting enough to see that some of these levels are also coinciding. So you can see now 1.0938, almost the same as the 1.0939, the 61.8 retracement level. Let me use another classical example. So my 50% retracement, 1.0905, that's more or less the same as the 38.2 retracement level, sitting at 1.0907. You can see typically these areas that's standing out where it's major support and resistance levels, and therefore key Fibonacci levels. So in short, when you're going to receive a trade idea that is saying selling the euro dollar and it's sitting close to this, let's call it 0.618 retracement level, then you can know that you can be a little bit more aggressive on the market, a little bit perhaps more exposure, or increase your risk, and therefore at least handle the position from there. I hope it's making sense. If you've got any more questions, you are welcome to email us, and we're happy to provide any other additional information. Thank you for your time, and keep well. Bye-bye.